All that autumn, the forests north of Green Bay sounded brittle. The rains had failed, the marshes drew down to cracked pans, and winds off Lake Michigan never let the smoke clear. Loggers cut fast and left waist-high windrows of slash along the roads, spruce tops, bark curls, splintered limbs that dried to the weight of paper. Farmers ringed their new fields with fire and trusted it to die in the ash. Railroad engines threw sparks from their stack caps, and the ties smoldered between the rails. October came on like a rasp. People swept soot from windowsills and told each other the same lie a dry country always tells: it will hold one more day. On Sunday, October 8th, 1871, Peshtigo woke under a sour yellow sky. It was a town made of wood and sawdust, mill sheds, rough-board houses, sidewalks, fences, bridges, everything that could burn. The river bent there and carried fresh-sawn pine toward the bay. It also carried escape in the shape of water. Church bells tried to sound ordinary. Men mended harness. Mothers hung linens that would never dry. All day the wind stiffened from the southwest, and the horizon to the north grew strange, an ember-colored smear that brightened even as evening came on. Fires already licked the cutover north of town, and others crept along the railroad grade far to the west. Toward evening, the fronts met. Heat rose, wind rushed to replace it, and the little burns became one broad machine. Flames ran the treetops, dove into the slash, crossed wet meadows as if they were floors. In the timber, the fire learned to sprint. It threw sparks a mile ahead and took the night in long strides. In Peshtigo, the Reverend Peter Pernin stepped into the street and felt a wind that did not gust or slacken. It streamed like a river. Cinders came down like sleet and stung his hands. Chickens went quiet. A freight train clattered through and dragged a comet tail of sparks. People stared north at the sky, no longer aglow but a moving light, as if dawn had become a wheel and rolled toward them. A mill whistle sounded, and the note broke into a cough of steam. When the thing arrived, it did not move like any fire they knew. It came as pressure and thirst, a roaring animal that drew the breath from a mouth before the heat touched skin. Roofs flashed from the eaves down. Boardwalks ignited and raced along the streets. A teamster cut his horses loose and watched their manes catch fire as they ran. The bridge to the east side already burned. The west end went next, and pieces fell to the black water like stars. Over the town a column twisted, the famous tornado of flame, people would call it, and wherever its edge touched, buildings tore open and vanished in sparks. Whole blocks turned to weather. The river became the only ground. Families stumbled to the bank, carrying quilts and infants, and the few things their hands had grabbed by instinct: account books, a locket, a tin with 2 biscuits. Men waded out with their mothers on their backs. Women pushed children beneath wheel hubs and held them there so the current would not tug them away. Father Pernin dragged the church tabernacle to the shallows and sunk it in a depression where it would not float. He clung to an overturned skiff, wet towel over his head, and prayed in gasps that tasted of ash. The fire climbed higher than the tallest pine, and the wind carried it. Barn roofs skated away flaming and landed burning a quarter-mile off. Stovepipes glowed cherry inside houses that had not yet caught from the outside. They split and showered rooms with coals, so the fire began indoors. Some who tried the river found it boiling at the edges where the water shoaled. Boats took flame while people were still stepping in. When the big mill chimney fell, it broke into bricks that rolled and hissed in the shallows like living things. Across Green Bay, embers crossed to the Door Peninsula and lit farms that had thought themselves safe. North and east in Michigan, the same wind drove a scatter of fires into a single front that erased towns overnight. That night, Chicago burned as well and seized the headlines for a century. but the inland sea of flame around Peshtigo moved with a speed and temperature that pushed language to its edges. No one there spoke of fighting it. They spoke of enduring it for another minute. By midnight, the gale began to flag. Ash fell like a soft gray snow and hissed where it touched the river. People rose from the water in pieces, burned in the shapes of their jackets, hair singed to stubble, throats raw as if they had swallowed sand. The town was not a town. It was a map drawn in coal, the black trace of a street, the iron ghost of a stove, the river the only line still true. Those who could walk went searching. They called names that did not answer and came back to the river silent. In the morning, survivors drifted south toward Green Bay and north toward Oconto, eyes narrowed against a light that seemed too clean. Relief wagons found them wrapped in rags, feet blistered bloody. Clerks sat at tables in the open and asked for names, ages, relations, and the names of the missing. People told what they could, and then stared at the paper as if the letters might confess where the others had gone. Father Pernin retrieved the tabernacle and wrote the account that history still leans on, a testimony salted with detail no one would have invented. Water that steamed, faces scoured by wind, a rosary melted into beads of metal. How did it happen? The simple list came first: drought, wind, human carelessness, bad luck. But the deeper arithmetic had been set years before. The forests were harvested like wheat, and the scraps left where they fell. Railroads cut corridors that channeled the gale. Settlers were taught to trust fire as a tool and to walk away once the field looked black. On October 8th, the atmosphere gave all those embers a common spine, and the result outran every fence and ditch men had made to organize the land. If there was a plan, the fire followed it. The plan that moved lumber to mills, mills to markets, and left a continent of kindling between. A cold front barreled out of the plains and struck the smoke lid like a hammer. Barometers fell. The wind became a steady stream that fed the rising column. Witnesses spoke of a roar like trains and of light that throbbed as if the air itself burned. Some swore the fire jumped the bay in spinning vortices, dropping brands on fields miles away. At Peshtigo, the church bell sagged. Clocks stopped when their faces blistered. When the counting began, men with shovels moved through ruins and chose where to dig. Many bodies could not be named. They were set in trenches and covered quickly so the living could be tended. Relief committees sent flour and blankets, and carpenters raised shelters before the snow. From courthouse ledgers came copied lists, each with its errors, each trying to say how many a single night had taken. Estimates of the dead came in a wavering hand, 1,500, 2,000, perhaps more. Whole families disappeared so completely that no one knew whom to count. The record of the living was no clearer. Many left that winter for other towns and did not return. Yet Peshtigo rebuilt because towns do. Mills rose on the same river. Houses went up where footprints of ash had settled. Children learned the old road names, even where the old roads had burned smooth. Markers were hammered into the ground and grew lichen. Stories were told in kitchens and church basements and on porches where the wind still smelled of pine. Chicago's story was larger, but Peshtigo's warning was plainer. Prosperity had arranged the kindling. Weather only struck the match. The line between a thriving industry and a loaded gun can be a summer's worth of drought and a wind that chooses not to stop. Fire respects no ledger and no map. It looks for the easy path, the seam of a railroad, the furrow of a cutover, the floorboards of a town built to hurry wood from forest to market. And then it takes it, precisely as designed. The people who crawled from the river at dawn understood that better than anyone. They did not rebuild out of forgetfulness. They rebuilt because memory demanded a town that could say what it had seen. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.